Good evening, everyone. It's now 6:30 p.m. and I call to order the regular meeting of the Victoria City Council. Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The first item on our agenda tonight is our announcements. This evening is likely our last council meeting of 2022, and this evening we have a couple special announcements to celebrate Councilmember Judy Black and Councilmember Alvin Hebert, who will both be stepping down from council at the end of this year. With the permission from my council colleagues, I'd like to take a moment to read some remarks that I prepared to express our gratitude for their service. Everybody okay with this? As the terms of my council colleagues, Judy Black and Alvin Hebert, come to an end, I want to take this opportunity to reflect on how grateful we are for their service, their leadership, and dedication to the residents and businesses of Victoria. Judy and Alvin, I look back at our time spent on the council together with a sense of pride and work that have brought us to where we are today. We may not always agree 100%, but without us all pulling in the same direction, we wouldn't have been able to accomplish what we have. I'm proud of the work we have accomplished over the past several years, and much of which have changed the landscape of Victoria for the better. Judy, you were elected in 2018. Councilmember Black has always been prepared and well-researched. She has served with the city of Victoria honorably over the past 4 years. She stepped up to run for office during a contentious time in the city when others might have shied away. We appreciate her courage and the positive energy that she brought to the council chambers. Thank you. Alvin, appointed in 2020. He's been with us just 2 years, but a wonderful addition to the council. He rose to the top and was appointed from a long list of well-qualified candidates and has proven over and over again what an excellent choice he was. Thoughtful and fair, Alvin brought his business acumen to the council to the city's great benefit. It has been a great honor and pleasure to serve with these two, and on behalf of Councilmember Roberts, Councilmember Gunderson, and myself, I thank you for both for your tireless efforts, enthusiasm, and dedicated years of service to the city of Victoria. This evening, we celebrate you, Judy and Alvin. The work you have done has been truly for the betterment of each and every resident, business, and visitor to our community. As you step down from council, it is my hope you continue to stay involved and give us, your community, the benefit of your wisdom and experience. Thank you for your service, your leadership, and friendship. I also understand that the city manager, Ms. Hardy, would like to say a few words.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Black, Councilmember Hebert, now staff. On behalf of city staff, I'd like to extend our sincere appreciation for your dedicated service to our community and for your leadership and support over the years. I really hope you're proud of the work that you have done and the many things that you've accomplished during your tenure. There have been so many projects and initiatives that you've been involved in which have improved Victoria and have well positioned us for the future. To highlight a few, you have created and launched our Community Builder program to help preserve the heritage of our community and recognize members of our community, past and present, who have made great and lasting differences in Victoria. You approved the final plat for our first building and first phase of Downtown West, our only expansion area for downtown. You have developed a strategy to ensure that we've continued to provide high-quality emergency response services in our community as we continue to grow in population and land size. And with that, you've authorized the purchase of land for our future fire station that will serve Victoria for the next 50-plus years. You found new and unique ways to bring the community together through the volunteer recognition event, the Citizens Academy program, our winter lighting celebration, to name a few. And we must not forget that you served your community during times of significant uncertainty through the COVID pandemic. You navigated with grace to ensure that the actions you took would provide ongoing services to residents and businesses without compromising quality. To do all these things, you attended countless city council meetings, workshops, public meetings, community events. You had to dedicate time and effort to prepare for each. Your council packets may have been well over 200 pages. You put in a lot of time, a lot of energy into making this community better. Your dedicated service has not been for money or recognition. Individually and as a group, you made Victoria a better place to be. You read through a lot of data. You did a lot of research. You asked difficult questions. You collaborated and you cooperated in the spirit of making good decisions for the greater good. And through all of this, you made us, city staff, better public servants. From the bottom of my heart, I'm going to miss working with each of you. I also know that this is not the end. Your connection to the community is strong, and I suspect you will continue to serve in your own unique ways. You are integral parts of the fabric of this community. Your work has made a difference. Each of you have made a difference. The team here at the city wishes you both all the best.
And with that, let's give these two a round of applause.
Thank you.
All right, the next order of business is to adopt our final agenda. Council, is there a motion to adopt the final agenda?
Motion. Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Our next item is open forum. Open forum is the opportunity for a member of the community or anyone to address the council on an item that is not on the agenda this evening and not in application form that will be coming to the council at a future date. No one has registered in advance to speak, but is there anyone in the audience who would like to address the council this evening? Seeing no one, we'll move on to our next item, which is the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda are routine, administrative, and do not require deliberation or are housekeeping items that are required by law. They're approved with one vote unless someone requests an item to be considered separately. Ms. Hardy, does staff wish to pull any consent agenda items for separate discussion and vote?
None from staff, Madam Mayor.
Any members of the council who would like to pull from the consent agenda? Any member of the audience that would like to pull an item from the consent agenda? Seeing no one, council, I'll take a motion to adopt the consent agenda.
Motion to adopt consent agenda.
We have a motion. How about a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Now moving on to our regular agenda, item 6.1 is a public improvement hearing for the 2023 street improvement project. Presenting this evening is City Engineer Kara Guerin. Ms. Guerin, the floor is yours.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. I'll be giving a brief presentation tonight prior to you opening the public hearing for this item. The information contained in the presentation is pretty consistent with what was presented to the Council when you all reviewed the feasibility report, and then was also shared with the neighbors in a neighborhood meeting last Monday. So I will try to keep it a little bit on the briefer side given the amount of items on your agenda tonight.
Thank you, much appreciated.
Just this slide we went into in greater detail previously, but I do hold on to this one just for a little historical perspective on the city's street improvement program. The city started implementing street improvements to streets throughout the community back in 2004. Based on a policy that was adopted in 2003 for how the city was going to fund street improvements. Since that time, all the streets shown in green have been reconstructed in the city under the adopted policy, and there's a handful of purple streets left to be completed. The subject of tonight's public improvement hearing pertains to some of the purple streets that remain for the city. I did hop out on site today and grabbed a couple of photos so you would have those handy about existing conditions on different segments of these roads. The picture on the left is from 80th Street. The picture on the right is from Rose Street. These two pictures are from Sunflower, and I do want to just pause a little bit on these two photos to just highlight what we're seeing here. So when engineers look at pavements that are in the conditions that are shown here, what we're seeing is signs that the subgrade underneath the road has failed. So we are at the point that the road does need to be fully reconstructed. This picture on the right, though, gives me an opportunity to highlight some what I would refer to Band-Aids that the city has done to these roads over the last 20 years when they've been deferred from being reconstructed. So what When you start to see potholes such as these forming on the left, the Public Works Department really needs to do something with roads that exist like this from a safety perspective. So what's been happening in this neighborhood is that the city's hired a contractor to come in at various different points and do some patching. So this section on the right was patched a number of years ago. The section on the bottom was patched more recently, and the section on the left hasn't been patched in any time recently. So if we do decide to defer improvements to these streets, we will need to dedicate some patching resources to go in and address some of these failing areas. Once the road's failed in this condition, you'll just continue to see pop-outs such as this. Certainly right now and in the spring, the conditions are worse than they are in the summer with freezing and thawing on the roads. Just a couple of photos here on the left and right of other streets within the city that have been fully reconstructed. So both of these streets, this is Quamaclet on the left and I believe Victoria Circle on the right, are representative of what a finished reconstructed road would look like in these areas. We would end up with a new street section, curb and gutter where it's needed, and we are looking at some storm sewer improvements throughout the corridor to improve drainage. We would be proposing to put in the city's standard residential street section. So underneath the pavement that you have on top, we have gravel, and then we have a 1 to 2 foot sand section. That's part of the standard that the city put in place 20 some years ago due to soil conditions throughout the city. So with the heavy clay soils that we have in Victoria, it is necessary to have the sand sublayer to provide drainage for water that might get into the road, underneath the road surface. As part of our standard improvements, the city does install drain tile at the bottom of the sand section. That's in order to drain the sand section, but we also provide drain tile service connections into each lot so that homeowners could connect their sump pumps that throughout the city we have a common problem with sump pumps discharging to the streets in our historical case. Now we've addressed most of those with all of the green on the previous map. We aren't proposing to widen the existing streets from their condition, so generally we're looking at 28 feet wide for Rose and Sunflower, and also matching the existing width for commercial. Under those conditions, parking would be permitted on both sides under current city policy. Trillium Trail is included in the project, and I'll show a graphic of that in the middle in a minute. That we're looking more at alley improvements in that situation. So a number of years ago, due to some erosion problems, the city did go in and pave that alley, but we are starting to see signs of distress in that pavement. So if we're going to do a project in this area, we do want to evaluate specifically what we should do to improve that alley. I don't anticipate that we would put curb and gutter in the alley. It's just simply too narrow, and we wouldn't want to be in a situation where we were affecting adjacent property owners by widening it.
Ms. Guerin, I have a question for you. Are alleys considered public roadways?
Is that a legal question? This particular alley, we call it an alley, but it does serve as the primary point of access and frontage to a handful of homes in the area. So it's the only one of the kind that we have in the city of Victoria.
So it's sort of public-ish.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Mayor and Council, if I can just add, it always depends on sort of how rights of ways are established, but generally speaking, what we refer to in Minnesota as alleys are almost always public roads or public alleys. They're publicly maintained.
Okay, thank you. All right, carry on.
We are looking at expanding the storm sewer that's in the area. There's a couple of catch basins, but we will, during the design phase, if the project moves forward, look at adding some additional storm sewer and catch basins to collect water. If a project does proceed, the city would also further evaluate the sanitary sewer and water system for any possible repairs. So if we're going to be reconstructing a new road in this area, we certainly wouldn't want to rebuild it over a pipe that we're having issues with, to the extent that we can identify it and repair it ahead of time. That's something we would do as part of the project. The sanitary sewer in the area is quite old. I want to say built back in the 1960s. But that sanitary sewer system has been lined, so we aren't anticipating needing to replace it in its entirety, but rather make some possible repairs here and there. So this is just a graphic of 80th Street, really intended to highlight the area that we're looking at for improvement. There is some existing curb and gutter that was installed at the expense of the landowner here on the north side. That curb remains to be in good condition, so we certainly wouldn't remove it just for the sake of removing it. We would leave it in place. From a feasibility study, too, we did draw in the potential for constructing a turnaround at the west end of 80th Street. Now, whether or not we actually would proceed with constructing that really would depend on some more detailed discussion with the property owner who owns the parcel adjacent to the parkland, and then also with our Public Works Department. If you've driven out there at all there recently, there's really just kind of a bunch of gravel at the end of the road that appears to be used as a parking area. Part of that does encroach onto the private property owned by the property owner to the south. So we would take a close look at that with the landowner and come back with a recommendation based on what we think makes the most sense there. But from a feasibility perspective, we wanted to identify that would be something that we would be looking at if a project were to move forward with design. This is Rose Street. We do anticipate needing to reconstruct it in its entirety. We do anticipate needing to likely put curb and gutter along the length of it. But what you'll notice from this drawing is that we aren't proposing a cul-de-sac to be constructed at Rose Street. The Public Works Director and Fire Chief did take a look at that in particular and concluded that there really just isn't enough room to install a turnaround in that location without really affecting private property. And so concluded that they've lived this many years without a turnaround, that they can continue to navigate it going forward. And then Sunflower, we are showing curb and gutter along the duration of Sunflower, but there's already curb-like function occurring in some of these areas. So certainly we would be evaluating that in design if we have to put curb in everywhere or not. We don't just put it in for the sake of putting it in. So we take a look at drainage to see what makes sense. And then this section is alley. And as I noted on a previous slide, we wouldn't go in and plan to put curb and gutter in this area. I just think it would be too impactful to the adjacent property owners, and we wouldn't want to do that. Though I have chatted with the landowner in this area, and there is some drainage that's kind of running off the road and across their yard that we might want to take a look at, ways maybe want to look at addressing that. All of that type of detailed work occurs during the design phase. So the work that's been done to date is really a desktop exercise with a site visit. So figuring out specific impacts to property owners and trees and everything like that happens during the design phase should the council opt to move forward with a project.
Ms. Guerin?
Yes.
The alley pavement, would you construct that like a city street, or is that just an overlay basically?
So Mayor, I think we'd want to do a little bit more investigating about what's there from a subsurface perspective. So I don't have any information available to me about how thick of a pavement the city put down. It was done by our Public Works Department through a maintenance contract. I think we'd want to do some soil borings and just find out a little bit more about what the pavement condition is there. Generally, if we can avoid going to the same extent as we would a public road, certainly we'd want to do that to minimize costs. This alley doesn't quite get the traffic that some of the other roads in the city, so we'd want to take that into account with finalizing a design. For the purposes of the feasibility study, we did assume we'd have to put a sand section in there, but we'd refine that as the project moves on.
All right, thank you.
So the estimated cost for the work, for the street and storm sewer work, is about $810,000. Per the city's policy that was adopted in 2003, a portion of the street and storm sewer costs are to be assessed. So I'm just going to hop back here. All of these folks along the green streets shown throughout the city were assessed 50% of the street and storm sewer costs. But as we discussed at the feasibility stage, when I applied the 50% cost share to this particular project here in 2022, the costs were getting pretty significantly high compared to what other folks in the city have paid for assessments. So I shared some options with the council, and we all landed on a 30% cost share really being more appropriate in today's environment for bidding and costs. We did compute the commercial properties separately from the residential property because that road is wider, has different needs associated with it. So we did separate those, and we are proposing that we would assess on a lot unit method. So based on that analysis, the commercial units, we're looking at an assessment of $11,550 per unit, and the residential assessments were $9,110 per unit. Under the city's policy, those assessments can be levied over a 15-year period. So if we were to completely complete this project in 2023, sounds weirdly in the future, all of a sudden, just talking about a process we started in 2003. If we completed a project in 2023, the typical process, the assessments then would be levied starting in 2024, and a property owner could choose to not pay any of it off, and then it would get added to their taxes for a period of 15 years with interest. You do have the ability to prepay an assessment without interest. There's a whole letter and everything else that we send out about that. For some projects, historically, we have opted to wait to the second construction season to put the final lift of asphalt on the road, depending on how extensive of improvements we conclude we need to make during the design phase. Under that scenario, previous councils have elected to wait to hold the final assessment hearing for yet another year. So instead of starting in 24, you'd be starting in 25. Those aren't decisions you make tonight. Those are decisions the council would make down the road, but some things that councils have done in the past, partly to give folks a little bit more time to possibly save up if they would prefer to save some money and pay off the assessment versus having to put it on their taxes with interest. That's some things previous councils have done in that regard. So the properties shown within yellow are abutting the improvements and would generally be included in the assessment. The ones highlighted in blue are the parcels that are adjacent to commercial parts of the road. And then these two properties we talked about at the feasibility meeting, they are highlighted in green because they have driveways solely coming off of 81st Street. And under the city's policy, they would be assessed when 81st Street is improved, not the side street. So typically under the city's unit method, different than like a front foot method, this house isn't paying for both roadway improvements. You just include them on one or the other, and that's been applied consistently through all the previous projects. This slide, I'm not going to read it. It just speaks to deferral of special assessment. So this doesn't come into play until the final assessment hearing, which doesn't occur until after the project is complete under the city's process. But certain criteria exists related to the deferment of special assessments that if folks are interested in learning more about that, they could contact me or the city clerk to discuss that. So in terms of the proposed project schedule, we are in this box here tonight, which is highlighted with a white box. Tonight, the council would be holding the public improvement hearing. There's a resolution included in your packet to order the improvement and the preparation of plans and specifications. So the work the council has authorized to date has been fairly inexpensive, in that it was simply this desktop study, and the results of which we've discussed tonight and when we presented the feasibility report. Once you authorize the preparation of plans and specifications, you're starting to spend significantly more money. The staff report noted that we would recommend using WSB to assist in the preparation, and the cost associated with that becomes much more significant. So it's always my advice to the council that tonight should be a meaningful vote if you're going to look to move forward with a project. You wouldn't want to necessarily, let's say you weren't in favor of doing a project, you wouldn't want to necessarily wait to April to make that decision, because at that point you've spent money that would need to be funded really with long-term street maintenance funds if you didn't proceed to do a project. By state statute, the resolution that you're being asked to approve tonight does require a supermajority to be approved. So with 5 of you here, that would mean 4 of the 5 of you would need to vote in favor of the resolution in order for it to pass. If the council does proceed, we would spend the next few months working on design, and the dates here below are tentative as we work through the design process, but has us having the council approve the plans the end of February, awarding a contract in April, and then construction starting in May, with kind of our standard completion date timeline. If we decided that we wanted to defer the wear course for a year, that would be something we would talk about around the time of approving the plans and specs and ordering the advertisement for bids. The final assessment hearing schedule, when these assessments actually become levied, isn't anticipated to be, it would be the fall of 2023 at the soonest, possibly 2024 if we decide to delay completing the project. So with that, I certainly will stand for questions. You need to hold a public hearing, and what you have on the screen would just be the council action should the council decide to move forward with anything tonight.
All right, thank you, Ms. Guerin. Council, questions for Ms. Guerin? Yeah, Councilmember Roberts, please.
So today I, drove on those roads, took a look at them. It seemed pretty apparent that Rose Street, Sunflower, 80th Street are in pretty bad condition. Can you talk about, though, if we decided not to do Trillium, what's that potential savings, right? Versus, okay, despite, right, we got inflation for one, where if we eventually will have to do it, so there'll be inflation, and so it'll be more expensive in the future. But I guess even just from a simple standpoint of the degradation that happens, and how much that could affect, I guess trying to balance, right, like wanting to be saving money if we can, but if it's going to cost a lot more in the future.
Sure, Councilmember Roberts. So the reason I included it is that it's really the only street left over there, that if we don't do it and then we have to come in and do something as a standalone project, the costs are going to be significantly higher, even if the repairs or the scope of the improvements become minor. I definitely think there's probably some opportunity to save some costs there, but I didn't want to conclude that until we do some of that geotechnical work and have a designer on board to work through with it. I don't have in my head, I could look it up during the public hearing portion to see if I can parse out how much just Trillium Trail is of the total project costs. But definitely I think we'd be looking to really, which is the case with all the streets, to minimize the scope as much we can. But that one, you look at the pavement, it definitely hasn't deteriorated to the point of the others, but it also hasn't been down as long. So it's a little bit newer pavement, and you're seeing that when you look at it.
We've done in previous projects where, to save money, right, we've done something on one side of the city and then we have them also do something, right? Is that something that, potentially, obviously, we're going to continue to have to fix roads, right, at some point, so we could always add it on group it with another road somewhere else at some point too? I mean, is that possible?
Yeah, that certainly is always an option.
And then I'm assuming, right? So you went through the steps, right? So if we get past this point, the next steps are the expensive steps. But I mean, it's fair to say we could say, I mean, if we're confident that we want to do 3 of the 4, and we're not sure about Trillium, and then we get more accurate data, right, when everything is done, we could say at that point, okay, like that would be more cost effective than just saying, right, like we can make that decision to say, okay, Trillium just seems way too expensive for what it is, or...
Yeah, that's certainly something that could be brought back once I get into the design work a little bit more, and then we could bring that back, you know, in the middle of these dates and say, hey, this is what I've learned. Do you want me to keep working on this, or do you want me to pull it out? Definitely.
I think that's all I have for right now.
All right. Councilmember Black,
I
please.
just have a question. On the one portion of the road that you said was newer that had been redone, patched, how long did that last? This one on the right, on the bottom, that was the newer patch. How old is that?
Councilmember Black, unfortunately, we don't keep track of patching by location, so I don't have readily available to me that information. It's really, and it's always really interesting when you start to see failures like this. I mean, these are definite signs of subgrade failure.
Right.
That depending on what kind of freeze-thaw cycle we have, it might last 3 years, it might last 5 years, or it might last a year. It just becomes very difficult to predict when you get to this point. What my recommendation had been to Public Works historically was do some bigger patches like they've been doing out there. Some cities will just come in and put like a thin, cheap
Asphalt over it?
Asphalt over the top of it, and that pops really fast. So, if the council were to say, look, it'd be great if the council doesn't want to do the project this year, if you provided some idea of how long we're deferring it for, is it 5 years? Then we can make some determination of how much maintenance money to put into the road in the meantime to try to limp it along longer.
What's the life of the road if we reconstruct it?
So with this street standard that we put in place with this sand section, we are really preparing a 50-year road section provided that the city stays on top of routine maintenance with seal coating, crack sealing, and then what we're typically seeing is a mill and overlay of just that surface level of pavement around 20 years. So that's that $10 million number that we've been working on for mill and overlays of all the streets that are in green and blue on the rest of the city map. So 50 years for the expensive part of the road, 20 years to replace the surface.
All right, thank you.
Can you remind me what year we originally deferred that, right? When it was supposed to originally be done, and now we've deferred it?
The last time the city did a feasibility study on the project was around 2011. And at that time, we were just about to embark on Highway 5 being closed for a year, and there was some concern by the business owners in general throughout the city of Victoria about having construction occurring around the same time as a big road closure was happening. That was one of the reasons I recall being discussed for deferring it. There was, I'm sure, concern about the assessment amounts, and for various reasons, the net effect was we deferred it and moved it to the end of the line, and here we are 10 years later.
All right. Council, other questions?
Yeah.
Councilmember Gunderson, please.
Where the circle is supposed to be, with the adjacent property owner, 8,000, what road is that? Where we're putting where you've...
80th Street.
Thank you. On 80th Street, do we know what the property owner intends to do, or if they have future plans? Because if they do, wouldn't they have to destroy the curb and gutter to create anything in that particular lot if they wanted to use it?
I've had one opportunity to talk with the property owner, and where we landed was if a project's going to move forward, it would probably be best if we met on site to take a look at it. I'd like to have somebody from Public Works and somebody from the fire department there, which sometimes can be one and the same person in Victoria, which is handy, to really kind of talk through what makes the most sense. Because Trillium Trail goes through, we really don't need to have a cul-de-sac at the end there, but I wanted to have something in the project in the event that gravel area is a problem for the property owner and we have parking going on there. We really should use this opportunity to see if we can come up with something that's better for both parties. But certainly that would need to be reached in consensus with the property owner. I don't see that we would require something that wasn't consistent with what their plans were.
Okay. And then if we were to wait, if we have construction projects, labor, supplies, things like that been cheaper 5 years later in a historical context, where if we do wait a certain period of time where it's going to be cheaper for the residents and businesses in 5 years?
Councilmember Gunderson, generally construction costs just continue to increase. We did see, little blips down here and there when you'd have not a lot of work and a lot of people looking for work, but with the amount of money going into infrastructure dollars right now, we're not anticipating there being a big slowdown anytime soon, but your guess is as good as mine. Historically, they go up.
Would any of these projects qualify for any kind of state dollars, being right off Highway 5 or anything that we'd be able to do that way?
No such luck.
No.
Councilmember Hebert.
Yeah, you mentioned earlier about safety was a concern. If we decide to delay this, is there any liability on the city? Should we push this? And from a safety perspective?
Councilmember Hebert, I won't speak to the word liability. I'd leave that to the city attorney. But generally, we would want to certainly pay attention to these roads from a maintenance perspective and put some dollars towards it to try to minimize the number of potholes. People do walk along our streets. There are no sidewalks there, so you always have that concern of risk. But yeah, I'll leave the word liability to the city attorney.
Attorney Bose, you want to chime in?
Mayor and Council, and until you have a road where there's an identified safety problem, there's a pothole that's caused damage to cars or caused a car to go off the road, until you have that situation, there really isn't a particular piece of liability concern that I've got. You can always make a policy decision about when to spend public money and when to spend resident money on these kind of projects. But putting that aside, liability to the city, you still are dealing with public safety, right? The fact that the city may not be liable for a road that's in rough shape doesn't mean that road is less safe or not less safe than other roads. You have to decide what you should do for the public, not based on liability. In other words, you got to do the right thing, I guess is what I'm saying.
Thank you. Anything else, Council?
Councilmember
Roberts.
What does the cost tend to be with, if we decided not to do these and we had to, basically put Band-Aids on these and patch a lot? What's that cost to patch them up?
Councilmember Roberts, it's certainly less than $800,000. You can do a whole lot of patching for $800,000. Typically Public Works, if Dave were here, he'd be in a much better position to answer that than me. But, typically we'll maybe budget $20,000 a year for these types of bigger patches. We do have commercial, which was another street we were looking at doing this year that we deferred because of an item that's on the agenda later tonight. That one's going to need a little bit more patching. The good news is because you're in a situation where so much of the city is green or blue, you do have, that scares me a lot more if you had all purple streets and that was the approach the city was going to take. Then you would be spending a lot of money on Band-Aids, but it isn't a very large neighborhood. Certainly that's something, if the council's just interested in learning more about, we could get that information from our public works director about what a typical type of patch costs.
But that would defer the patching for other planned.
Yeah, we pay for that out of long-term street maintenance funding. We've had many agenda item about the $10 million worth of needs for maintenance of these roads over the next decade that we need to fund too. So,
All right. Council, any last questions?
So if we decide to do the patch route, right, you mentioned the 800K, we couldn't use a portion of that to cover the patching and not have to decide on which other project?
So generally, the $800,000 project, we haven't made these decisions yet. It would happen during the design phase, but typically the city would issue debt for that project, so we would bond for it, and then we would use the assessments to help us fund those bond payments over a period of 15 years. The maintenance money would come out of the long-term street maintenance fund.
Okay.
All right. Anything else, Council?
Mayor, I just want to reiterate for the benefit of the residents that may want to comment what the city engineers already said, which is that while you've seen now and you've had presented to you what the staff is likely to recommend in terms of how much gets assessed and how those assessments get divvied out to folks along the project, you're not deciding that tonight. You're deciding whether to move forward with the project, not about assessments. Now, folks may want to comment on the likely assessment they'd face, but that's not an issue in front of you tonight.
Thank you, Attorney. All right. Other?
Are
Yeah,
you going to tell us
Councilmember Black.
how the meeting went?
Oh, certainly. So happy to do that. So our intention with the neighborhood meeting is really to give a similar presentation, but in a greater level of detail, and be available to answer any questions that the residents have so that they can show up here tonight prepared to provide their feedback to you. So there was, I want to say, maybe a dozen or so folks in attendance, and they asked a lot of really good questions. As I would expect, expressed concern about the assessment amounts, but generally we encourage them to collect that feedback and either share it with the council in writing ahead of tonight or here tonight at the hearing.
Thank you. All right. Last call, Council. All right. With that, I will now open the public hearing. So if there is anyone here that wishes to speak to this item, please approach the podium and state your name and address for the record, please.
Good evening. My name is David Lura, and I almost have a house on 8090 Trillium. I want to thank you for listening to us to talk about this. It's very important. I am looking forward to a project like this. All the roads are in semi-bad shape. The road that I live on, Trillium, one thing I'd like to point out is I kind of would like us to start talking about Trillium as a street, not just an alley, because Trillium is a street, and it does need some work that needs to be done on it. I bought the property that the city used to own, City of Victoria, and there's a little bit of runoff that goes down in the right corner of it, and I could see some advantages for everybody actually involved if we did do some additional work on that. One thing that's planned are the two other roads have curb and gutter, but Trillium doesn't really have anything planned for it. I talked to Mrs. Gearing about this, and she was talking about doing some additional things. I would highly encourage you guys to spend a little time, a little consideration for doing a little bit on Trillium. So thank you.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Lura. Is there anyone else that would like to speak to this item? Second?
So you're okay with everything? I just want to know.
This is your opportunity to speak. All right. One more time. Anybody else that would like to speak to this item? All right. With that now, I will close the public hearing and open the floor to council for discussion.
So the plan currently, right, is Trillium would stay the same way, right? There'd be, you'd said, no intention of curb and gutter, and it would stay the same width, correct? Is there, it sounds, at least from one resident, that he's in favor of, doing what's needed there. I'm just even wondering if we're looking at it that it's a road and not is there option there, I guess, for requiring land, like to make it an actual 2-lane road?
Sure, Councilmember Roberts. I don't think we'd want to widen it out to our minimum width is really 24 feet. That'd be a significant change, and there's garages right up close to it. But yes, certainly, from a feasibility report, we didn't assume curb and gutter along the whole length of it because that would be really a really big change because you have to change the elevation of the road by about 6 inches, which starts to become really problematic for tying in driveways and landscaping and things of that nature. But certainly there is an opportunity to improve the things that the resident spoke to, and he and I did have an opportunity to speak about it, particularly at that one end. We may want to put some curb in order to accommodate that. We would work through that through the design phase, and during that phase we do typically meet with the property owners at least once or twice, depending on the scope of the improvements, and to get a sense of some of those more localized problems. So I do think that we'll be able to work with that property owner to address the concerns.
Do you think that the putting in a curb in the gutter towards the end, that will alleviate the issue?
So typically what will happen once a project would be authorized is our consulting firm will go out and do a detailed topographic survey and prepare a base map so that we can really understand the way things are draining. And so we would be looking at that detailed work through an engineering lens to figure out how to solve the problem, also not creating a new one. So we can't always solve private property drainage issues that are adjacent to a roadway, but having looked at this a couple of times, I do think we'll be able to work with that property owner in that area. There is curb on 81st Street, so figuring out how we'd tie that in would be what we'd work through. Or if we needed to look at putting in some storm sewer, that would be another solution.
All right. Council, last thoughts? Councilmember Gunderson?
Well, I just had a question. You said it's 80th Street that's in front of Victoria Automotive. Is that what you're saying?
This is 80th Street up here on the north end.
And that's where Victoria Automotive and the electric place and the, this is a commercial.
Cabinet maker.
Okay, this is the cabinet maker. This is Victoria. No, that's Victoria. That's where the the car lot. I'm talking about this is the, over here to the right is Victoria Automotive, or Victoria Auto Works used to be, now it's Victoria Automotive. To me, that road right there is basically a parking lot. And I didn't see a lot of damage there. Where are they going to park their cars that they're working on and all of that kind of stuff?
Sure, Councilmember Black. So the photo I took here is just west of the location of the street that you were referencing. So the cabinet makers on the left, and then what used to be Victoria Auto House on the right. That's forever what my brain wants to call it, just like it's the antique building over here, not the Noterman building. But I should have grabbed a photo of it. The section that you were referencing, Councilmember Black, is an area, so in here, right. This is an area that the Public Works Department did go in and do some pretty extensive patching recently.
Okay, so right.
So that that we've been routinely doing patching. So the sections that have been patched more recently are going to look a lot better because they're basically putting a Band-Aid over the top of it. In terms of certainly the impact of construction in this area, that is something that we are going to have to work really closely during the design phase with the property owners to figure out what makes sense for staging and how we're going to tackle that. Because of course we have to keep them operational through that process, and we'll have to write that into our project specifications. So we didn't get an opportunity to talk about that part of the project at all at the neighborhood meeting. That would be something that typically would happen during the design phase, that we'd work through that with folks.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Black, anything else?
No, I was concerned about that because that's new ownership, so he's building a business there. And I know the little antique store there, she's trying to survive. And I'm just worried when they're trying to do business, where are their customers going to park? Where's he going to, the cars that he's working on, where are those going to go? That was my concern the most with making this work. I was also concerned about the overall cost because of, we got $20 million worth of roads coming at us, and I just wanted to make sure that this is being done at the right time. Interest rates have gone up, and we're talking, prime plus 2%? That could really make the payments higher than what we're used to. So these were considerations that I had that I think we should talk about.
Councilmember Gunderson, please.
Do we know how much traffic they get outside of residential use for the people in the area, customers, and things like that? And then on top of that, when does a road become impassable, when we would say you can't drive on it anymore?
Councilmember Gunderson, we don't do specific traffic counts on these roads. I'm sure the people in the audience might be able to speak to a little bit more. It did come up at the neighborhood meeting that there is a lot of, let me get to this map. There's a lot of cut-through traffic that takes Sunflower up to 80th Street as a shortcut. I'm sure many of you have experienced the backup on 11 at Highway 5 at peak time.
I take it to go to the gas station.
It did sound like, from what the residents were saying, that they do see quite a lot of traffic that routes this way instead of going down to 11 and up and through. Order of magnitude, I can't speak to that. In terms of your second question, we have an obligation to maintain the streets. So the city, it really just depends how much maintenance dollars you throw into the problem. So at some point, the road needs to be rebuilt. There's no question that it's beyond its useful life. So it's really just, what's the timing of that? Are you doing it now, or are you doing it down the road? And if you defer it, you're going to just have to continue to put more significant patching dollars into it. And the residents are going to have, they're particularly like on Rose and Sunflower, they're going to continue to have versions of this over time in front of their house. And it'll move depending on where Public Works patched last.
What type of feedback did you get at the public meeting from the business owners adjacent to the streets?
Most of some of them are here. I don't want to necessarily speak for them. It was just a lot of clarifying questions around the assessment policy and, the fairness of the assessment policy. The property owner who had to pay to put the curb in along the north side of the road isn't enthusiastic about then having to pay an assessment for the road on top of the curb that the city required him to put in a number of years ago.
Assessments aren't fun, we know that, but we do have a responsibility to maintain these roads, and these are in terrible shape and have been for a number of years. And to Ms. Guerin's point, it's been deferred now for at least 10, if not more. So I think the time has come. We've got a few purple streets left. We want to get those brought up to city standards. So with that, if there are no further comments from the council, I will entertain a motion.
Just
Councilmember Gunderson, please.
Just Judy wanted to have a conversation about the assessment, about the interest rates, and none of us are deaf to that, right? I mean, we're not deaf to where we're at in the financial things, but if the percentages come down a bit and costs go up, we don't know what those costs could be over time, right? So it's gonna, rates might offset project costs going up, right? I mean, that's a potential. So while that's, that's the hardest thing about these. I think we've made an effort to reduce what we've done in the past, right? Because we did feel this is a smaller area impacting a fewer residents with a higher, what is likely a higher trafficked area with cut-through traffic. And we've all talked about we have a responsibility to do the roads. So it's just where are we at on how do we, none of us have a crystal ball to say what the costs are going to be in a few years.
Would we have the ability, sorry, Derek, we have the ability to refinance should rates come off?
For the bond,
So
they haven't done it for mine.
So to Attorney Vosa's point, you'll be making a decision on the specific terms of the assessment at the time of the final assessment hearing. If the city does opt to issue bonds for this project, that'll come back forward to the council. So, those things will end up coming back to you through the process. What you see here is what our policy says. So, I'll just turn to Trish and say, yeah, we're just going to pay cash for the project, and didn't get a yes.
Don't make Trish nervous. All right.
She's shaking her head back there.
All right. Any other thoughts, questions, comments? All right. Council, I will entertain a motion, please.
Motion to adopt of a resolution ordering the improvement, the preparation of plans and specifications for the 2023 street and drainage improvements.
Thank you. I have a motion. Can I get a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Moving on, item 6.2 is our truth and taxation hearing for the 2023 budget and levy. Presenting this evening, we're going to let Ms. Pollock, we're going to switch out the staff here a little bit, and Assistant City Manager Tricia Pollock will be presenting. Ms. Pollock, welcome.
Good evening, Mayor.
Good evening. Welcome.
This evening, we are having the 2023 budget public input, also known as the Truth and Taxation hearing. So myself and the city manager are available to the public to answer any questions they may have about the 2023 budget.
All right, terrific. Any comments from council before we get started? All right, with that then, I will open our Truth and Taxation hearing for 2023, proposed budget and levy, and I will open the floor for public comment. If there is anyone who wishes to speak to this item, please approach the podium and state your name and address for the record, please. Please.
I'm Roland Olson, and nice to meet all of you again. I'm the one that owns Olson Cabinets and Woodworking, which I'd like to be referred to instead of a cabinet maker. I'm here because when I received the proposed taxes, I was flabbergasted and annoyed that my taxes have went up 71%, and I need something done here. It almost looks like somebody's trying to run me out of town. You know, I've put up with material costs in the last year or so, the way they've changed, and some of them have doubled, and I'm trying to run a business here. And together with that and the road improvements and the proposed property tax, it's getting to be more than I can handle. It's just one thing after another here. You know, everything is high, and I have to be careful about bidding because I'm bidding against others. And so I have to get a certain amount of jobs to keep my employees busy. And so I'm wondering why I have to pay 71% more in property taxes this year than other years. Other years it has went up some, but never like this. And I just need to know what's going on, and I need them reduced.
Mr. Olson, is it the valuation? Has your valuation of your property changed?
Part of the valuation is mostly, I think, or part of it, and then there's other things in here too that, I mean, there's a whole list of things here, but I guess the valuation has went up considerably.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of the increase in taxes come from the increase in valuation of properties.
Okay.
So, Ms. Hardy, if you can help me out here, the city portion of your tax, so if you have $1 of tax dollar, the city portion of your tax dollar is actually going to go down this year. The valuation is what's creating the increase in taxes. Okay. And the county, Carver County, is the one responsible for the valuation of your property. Ms. Hardy, if you can help me out here, if that's an accurate statement or can help me out.
Thank you, Mayor. And just to build on what the mayor was saying, so for example, let's take that dollar example. So last year, if your house or your business was worth $10, the city portion of your tax bill would have been 33 cents. This year, if you have that same valuation, so if your house or your business was worth $10, the city portion of your taxes is going to be 27 cents. So, and the council, and that has been able to be achieved because of the reduction in the tax rate and the work that the council has done to reduce the tax rate.
I understand that you're still going to be paying more taxes. I understand that. Your output is a larger portion of that. But the valuation of your property, which is making up for a lot of that increase in taxing that you have, or taxes that you have to pay, comes from Carver County. So they are the folks that need to hear from you.
Well, you know, I see all this building going on and all these plants going up. And somebody else must be paying some taxes. So why does taxes keep going up when all this building's going on? I don't understand that. You know, my buildings are getting older. I need more maintenance on them. And the buildings are older and I gotta pay more taxes on them. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. You know, I can understand maybe the lots would go up because when you build, you have to pay more for lots nowadays, but you know, with the buildings getting older and I got to pay more taxes, to me, that doesn't make a lot of sense. So.
Yeah. Could I say something about that? I was looking around and I saw that and I brought it up to our city manager today because I saw how it jumped in value from $279,000 to $419,000, and that's where your increase came, and that's from the county assessor. And when they sent you in the beginning of the year, when they sent you the notice of valuation, that's when you were supposed to say something. At this point, they're not going to allow you to say anything. I'm really sad about this, that this happened.
I guess I didn't realize that.
This is something that I've talked with her about on a way to educate the public so that they do understand that. We contract with the county assessor and he assesses the properties, and then what our portion of that tax is like the mayor said, 27 cents on the dollar. I don't know what we could do, but I can see it's gone up $3,000.
I think at this point in time, it's out of our hands, but Mr. Olson, if you can leave your name and number with city staff, they might be able to put you in contact with somebody at the county that can help you with your valuation.
Well, you know, I figured it out. According to my calculations, I was paying $11,446, and the next one's now $16,082.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is crazy. In 1 year, I can see maybe gradual increases, but, you know, in 1 year like this is crazy.
Yeah, plus this is a commercial building, so that's...
I don't know about the other owners. Maybe they're all in the same boat, but to be able to afford this kind of thing, it's getting to be
I
a real
agree.
burden.
Yeah,
I agree.
we understand.
So we need something done here.
Will you please leave your name and number with city staff, with Tricia, and then they will put you in contact with somebody from Carver County.
Okay.
All right? Thank you.
All right. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming forward.
All right. Anyone else? Please. State your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Steve Johnson. I live at 2600 Auburn Drive. Actually, what I have is a question, if you could help me understand this, because as what I'm hearing you say is you don't have any control over this, because as property values rise, your taxes automatically go up. Now, in my mind, as you budget, you have a number of dollars you need to run the city and everything that goes along with it. So is what you're telling me that because we did contact the county when we got our 35% increase in property values. And to a certain degree, that's the way things work. They move up, etc. And what I was told by the county assessor was that everybody's went up 25 to 40% or 35%. So what you're trying to tell me at this point is because of that, you're automatically getting a 25 to 30% increase in your budget. So, and we discussed this and we had a debate over it in terms of what's going on, but to me, the assessed value is a function of the market, right? And assessed value usually trails the market by a couple of years, so the actual dollars. But what we're really looking at here is a total budget. And if what we're hearing is just because your value raises, you pay more taxes, that means you automatically float with that? That doesn't make any sense. The reality, and help me understand this, because I really, let me finish my thought because my brain is a little bit goofy. So you're dealing with an overall budget that you set. Why is it just because our property values rise that all rises? It seems like a bit of a canard and excuse to me. Thank you. Yeah.
Councilmember Black, please.
Our tax rate was at, I think, 32%, 32 something, 33.
Yep. And I understand that it went down.
Now we dropped it down to 27. Our budget did go up because we have more expenses, just like everybody else's. Our utilities, our costs of doing everything went up.
Yeah.
So we came up with our budget, what we needed, and we dropped our rate from the 33% down to the 27, and that's where.
But if we, okay, so we went from 35 to 27%, is that what you said? But our value of our properties went up 35%. I mean, so it sounds good if you're not paying attention to the numbers, but it doesn't come out in the long run. And I think the reality is what you're saying. We understand we're in a growing community that and I think, you know, we travel a bit and we drive through these cities. You drive through Victoria, it's a great little city. It's beautiful. I mean, it really is. We've got very nice things. But at some point in time, You know, we look at, I own a business, my wife owns a business. I understand exactly what you're talking about. And, you know, we want really nice things, we want to pay for them, but it's a little bit irritating. Irritating is not the right word. I understand how things work, but to say, okay, you know, at some level it's like, don't tell me you're doing me a favor because you cut the rate from 35 to 27%, when the reality is it's about the big number of what's going out, right? I mean, the reality is. And, you know, we talk about a growing city, which a growing city should be bringing in additional revenue, right? I mean, that's the point. The point is that's why you bring it in. So, you know, I get, when I hear something that's, you know, with all due respect, it's not our problem, it's the county. No, it's not. It's about our overall budget, what we're after here. And yeah, it's just, we want to make sure that what we're really looking at is the reality, and we're not trying to cover it, right? Okay, it's about the budget. Because when I had the debate about the increase in our value, it was like, you need to talk to the council. You need to talk to people that are setting the budgets, because everybody's rate's going up. So it's not like your rate's going up X and somebody's staying the same. So something doesn't make sense to me somewhere in terms of how we're actually making this happen. So anything you do to help me understand it, I'm fine, because I understand the reality of working with that. But what I'm hearing seems to be a little bit of smoke and mirrors about who's responsible.
Oh,
Well,
And, okay, and because the reality is how much money we're spending
Right.
and what we're getting
Right.
for it.
So what I'm hearing you say is, even though at the end of the day, we're spending more money here in the city of Victoria next year than we are this year.
Yeah,
And that's true. And
Yep.
that is true.
Yep.
Despite all the valuations, despite the tax rates, all of that, we are spending more money
Yes.
here in the city of Victoria. And if you think about the city of Victoria in terms of, yes, we're a business, we hire people, that's our main thing.
Yep.
People are hard to come by, so we want to retain our people, so we
Yep.
have all of those challenges. Councilmember Black mentioned the costs around things like utility. We're a growing
Yeah.
community, so we're facing high construction costs and
You're
all
not
of
telling
those
me
things.
I'm not dealing with at my business or whatever else, but
Right.
I don't have confiscatory power to say, I'm gonna get this money from you.
Understood.
I mean, you have to bid
Understood.
jobs, right? I mean, we're fighting everybody else, and you have a lot of other things going on. And I'm not accusing people. I mean, I think everybody here wants to do the best thing they can. But we have to look at, you know, it's kind of a saying, you don't want to kill the golden goose. And the golden goose are the people that supply you with the money, right? I mean, it's the people, and if, you know, and a Main Street business here, if he, you know, he has, we operate on small margins. We don't just get to bring it in. Anyway, I'm looking for some help to understand what it is, because I think, you know, I don't always, and I don't accuse anybody of lying, but I think there's easy ways to get through an argument that really don't address the issue. And the issue is, sure, we want everything, but we have to look what we can afford.
Yeah.
And we have to look at how we say that, because I do believe that, you know, we can't hide behind a smaller rate because we're getting this, because it's still increasing. I mean, it's huge.
Mr. Johnson, I understand. I understand the frustration, and I understand the smoke and mirrors reference for sure. So the city council over the past 6 months has gone through this pretty extensive process of picking and choosing priorities and things that we wanted to add to the budget and things that we had to add to the budget. And so we've deferred a lot of nice to have stuff for the things that we need to have. So, you know, as residents here ourselves, we really, it's important to us too. We want to live here in Victoria. We want to have nice things. We want our infrastructure to work. And so we take that job very seriously. We don't tax people lightly. And we understand the frustration of that. Everybody's budgets are being squeezed.
And again, I understand. I don't think you're here to enrich yourselves. I mean, goodness knows that you're not retiring on this, and you're doing it because you do care. And shame on me for not paying attention sooner, because until the notice came out, it was kind of like, what? You know, so I guess we all need to pay a little attention sooner and hold people a bit more feet to the fire. And you know, you're doing your job because you're doing your job, you're doing a good job, and there's a lot of really not very nice stuff that goes along with it. But, and I applaud you for it, and you know, you guys that are retiring, you're probably gonna go, whew, we're done with this, but, because it's, you know, and more people should be involved. But I just want some help in understanding what's going on, because at some level, you know, it's pretty simple, income, outflow.
Right.
They have to balance or whatever, so.
Yeah. And I can tell you, everything that we're spending the money on is in our budget. It's online. And if you want, I'll sit down with you and I'll show you exactly where the money's going. I mean, we're not doing
for not
frivolous.
paying more attention. I mean, so
Yeah.
but it's kind of like things kind of go along at a certain level, you kind of get comfortable with them, and then all of a sudden.
Oh, I've been nervous all year trying to figure out, you know, what's this going to happen.
It's been a nasty few years.
Well, and I think one thing we talk about a lot during this process is level of service, right? And we want to make sure our residents, we've all become accustomed to having, right, nice roads, our street, right? Like all these things. And I mean, our city staff and our city manager, right, do a great job of making sure in that budget, what we're asking for is to make sure that those services aren't decreased, right? If we lowered that rate even more, we wouldn't be able to give the same level of service that we did last year.
I think you're talking about something here that's a bigger discussion in terms of what we've become used to, and at some point it's unsustainable to what we want and what we can afford. And I'm not, you know, and I'm talking, this is the grassroots of kind of where everything happens. I mean, it gets worse as we go up the ladder of what's happening. But at some point in time, it's the discipline to understand from a longer term, you know, we'll probably all be dead and gone, but it's going to happen at some point in time where it becomes top heavy and we cannot sustain, and we're not willing to make the sacrifices, and we're not willing to really look at what it is that we have. So thank you for your time, and all I really want is just to help me understand this, because there's got to be some sort of an answer, or at least some sort of whatever. So
thank you for coming forward. We appreciate your comments. We appreciate you taking the time on a cold night to come out and talk about this. But yeah, I think we all share those concerns. We want to make sure we're making good decisions. We want to make sure we're spending the money wisely. We don't want to grow at an unsustainable rate. Yeah. And I thank you for your comments about we're at the grassroots. So it's true. Thank you, Mr.
Good luck to all of us.
Question. I should know this, but I can't remember. What was the percentage in terms of budget this year versus last year?
Councilmember Hebert, so are you referring to the change in the levy or the dollar amount in the
gross
change?
Dollar amount.
Okay, so it was $749,000 was the difference between the levy this year and 2022.
Which was roughly what percent increase?
So it would be 11.3%.
All right. Anyone else? Please state your name and address for the record.
Gary Corwin at 780 Virginia Shore Circle. So I just want to talk some numbers because you kind of brought up one of the questions that I have, but I'm going to start with my individual property. And I know that this isn't a property tax budget meeting, but my assessed value went up $318,000 in 1 year. So that equals 21% increase. Okay, so that's $2,700 in 1 year. Okay, that's not sustainable for anybody, and I don't think it should be. And we realize that the values of homes over the whole country went up 25 to 40%. Phoenix, Arizona, 35% on average. My value went up 33.4% according to the assessed value. The property taxes went up 21%. So now we look at the budgets that the Carver County has, that the city of Victoria has, that the Minnesota School District 276 has. And we start adding all of those up. Okay, and we decide what that adds up to is what the tax levy amount gets applied, multiplied times to figure out my taxes. So when you talk about the 33 cents and then you say you reduced it to 27, it sounds good. But it's not good if that percentage is very small compared to the increase. Because the increase that you're working off of is 33.4% for every home, possibly. I know it's not, but the increase is huge and your decrease is small. And according to the information that you sent out, under the supplemental budget information, it says here that your percentage increase for the city of Victoria is 11.6. Okay, you said 11.3.
Yeah,
So-
we are reducing, that's our proposed reduction
Okay, so-
for this evening.
And 11.3 is more accurate then?
So the 11.3 is what we're proposing to council this evening because we cut $20,000 out of the budget since the max tax, which is the information that you have there.
Okay, so just prior to coming to the meeting tonight, I got on the Minnesota Revenue website. And they looked at, and they said that they had some numbers there for me. And they said the preliminary property tax levy for 2023, they said the city's average for the cities in the state of Minnesota was 9.1%. So that means we're above that. We're above the average, okay? The school districts was supposed to be across the whole state of Minnesota was 6.9. The school district that we live in, 276, was 10.9, okay? Carver County was within the average for the whole state at 4.9. My point is, when you start adding up all these numbers and you start adding up the increases, I'm retired. I'm on a fixed income. I don't have any way to make any more money in retirement at this point. So we don't have anything in the state of Minnesota that accounts for people who are retired. We don't have any way to freeze their property taxes, which we should. We don't have any consideration for a lot of these things that are happening. So as my value goes up, and I've lived there for 32 years, as my value goes up, I can't stay in my own home that I built and pay taxes on for 32 years. And in 32 years, I've bought that property 1.5 times, in addition to what I paid for it with a mortgage. So you have to ask yourself, is that what you want to happen to you when you retire? Do you want to have to move out of your house in order to be able to, because you can't afford the taxes? My taxes went up $2,700. So they went from $12,600 to $15,300. Okay? And when I moved in there 31 years ago, it was about $2,000. So that's what I don't like. And you guys sit up here, and I understand you do everything you can to cut budgets, but what you don't understand is we're talking 35% increases in assessed values, 21% increases in property taxes, and only 5% in Victoria city taxes. And yes, I did pay for an assessment on the street in front of my house, which I thought was way above the state statute limit of 429 states that you can only assess equal to the benefit. The benefit is equal to the increase in your property value due to the project. Those people are not benefiting to that much, and I still don't know how you can assess and have an assessment that doesn't equal the benefit, because state statute 429 says you have to.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Corwin. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to address council this evening?
Jenny. Sure.
Any others? Okay, All right, now I will close the Truth and Taxation hearing and open the floor for council discussion. Council, questions, comments? All right, seeing none. Ms. Pollack, do you have a presentation for us this evening?
Yes, Mayor, I do. Thank you. So this evening is our final a meeting for the adoption of the final budget and tax levy. The adopted preliminary levy that you approved in September was an 11.6% increase over 2022. Staff reviewed the elections of the employees after the health benefits open enrollment came out, and we were able to reduce the levy by $20,000 due to the one person going off of family insurance. So we're happy to report that. The tax capacity rate is decreasing 3.8%, and a medium home value increased from 2022 11.4% to $547,200. The 2023 tax on a medium value home is $1,499, which is a 2.2% decrease from last year. Also, at our last meeting, Council had asked for us to bring back some additional information about full-time equivalent staff. So we did, I did put together this information. Those 6 cities on the right side of the line are our spotlight cities. So they aren't our market city comparables, but they are cities that we do compete with for staffing. And so for staff retention reasons, I've included them in this graph. As you can see, Victoria has 32 full-time employees, and with Minnetrista at 39 and St. Francis at 31, closest to us. Does council have any questions about the full-time equivalent chart?
Council questions? Carry on.
So staff is asking council to approve the final tax levy for collection 2023, adopt the final general fund and Victoria Recreation Center fund budgets, adopt a resolution for the final 2023 water, sewer, and stormwater fund budgets, and then also adopt the 2023 through 2027 capital improvement plan.
All right. Do we want to take these one by one, or do we want to take them all as one motion?
If you could do them one by one, that would be great.
All right. Council, questions prior to? Seeing no questions, I will entertain a motion.
Motion for a resolution approving a final tax levy for the city of Victoria for collection in 2023 in the amount of $7,370,428.
We have a motion. Can I get a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Council, I'll entertain another motion, please.
A resolution adopting the final 2023 general fund and Victoria Recreation Center fund budgets.
I have a motion. Can I get a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. A third resolution?
A resolution adopting the final 2023 water fund, sewer fund, and stormwater fund budgets.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. And a final resolution.
Resolution adopting the 2023 to 2027 capital improvement plan.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, moving on. Our next item is item 6.4, which is a public hearing for the 2023 fee schedule. Presenting this evening from city staff is Assistant City Manager Alyssa Swanson. Ms. Swanson, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. 1 second to pull up the presentation. Wonderful. So thank you again, Mayor, members of City Council. So annually, the City Council adopts an ordinance establishing the upcoming year's fee schedule. Tonight, we are also holding a public hearing for the proposed 2023 fee schedule, which can be found in your agenda packet. Additionally, after the public hearing, staff is looking for 2 motions. The first is to adopt an ordinance that would adopt the revised fee schedule, and then the second motion would approve a resolution authorizing the ordinance for publication of title and summary. There we go. So although we are nearing or just finalized our end of the year conversations, fees and reviewing of the fee schedule began early this spring and led into this summer. Per council direction, staff annually conducts a deep dive analysis of all of our city fees, and we conduct a comprehensive workshop regarding our fees and the setting of fees. And this year we held that in August. So criteria that staff look for are market city comparisons and best practices. A good example of market studies would be our recreation programs. We also look at fees required by external sources such as the International Building Code, cost recovery, or just the cost of doing business related to fees. A great example would be pool permits. And then we have utility fees, which are based on our rate studies. And the last rate study was conducted a couple of years ago. So like I said, the budget workshop for fees was held in August of this year. And then as a result of those deep dives and of that workshop discussion and your feedback, Council, we have proposed tonight the 2023 fee schedule. Your full fee schedule, as well as any red line changes to the fee schedule, are made available in the staff report this evening. And because this is an ordinance adoption of the fee schedule, a public hearing must occur. So Mayor and Council, I will pause for any questions you may have. Otherwise, Mayor, I will pass it over to you for the public hearing.
All right. Any comments, thoughts from Council first and foremost?
The only one I had is, I think, I'm trying to remember when it happened, a year or so ago, maybe that, we got the letter from Housing First about our certain fees and such. I'm just wanted to make sure like we're looking good on these types of things. You're right, if there's any concerns with any adjustments we made.
Yeah, Council Member, Mayor, rest of Council. Oh, sorry, Mayor. Thank you for that question. Staff, especially our building department, actively looks at our fees. And for all of our building department related fees, we want to make sure that, one, we're doing the cost of business and that we're looking at our administrative costs for applying those permits. But we're also relying on that International Building Code and utilizing them to guide us through what the best practice is for all of our building related fees.
All right. Yeah, Ms. Hardy, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Members of the Council, Councilmember Roberts. Again, excellent question. And as Alyssa stated, that is something that we've really made sure to pay attention to. We want to make sure that we're cost recovery and not collecting more and not under collecting either. And so we continuously look. There are some of those fees are set by statute. Some of those fees we're looking to see what our costs are. Are there efficiencies to reduce costs? In the last two budgets, we've talked about reducing those costs because of the efficiencies that we've gained. So we're not in a position where we're collecting more than what we need to for providing that service. So we're proud to say that we have identified over the last two budgets areas where that can be done, and we have passed that on as part of this process.
Terrific. Thank you. Councilmember, Council, any other questions?
Mayor, can I just piggyback? I was going to
Please,
make this
Attorney
comment
Vos.
during the reports, but I'll make it now. It's related to the council member's question. Another area where Housing First has been concerned, it relates to park dedication and park dedication fees paid by developers in lieu of dedicating land for parks. And the rule of thumb that is embodied in your fee schedule, and it's reflected in the proposed one going forward, was actually a rule of thumb set by a court decision. It's not set in a statute. It's a court case that said one city's particular fee was okay, and you've kind of married to that, as a lot of other cities have. There is now a new court case in front of the Minnesota Supreme Court that's pending, where the parties have asked for further clarification of that. So I just would highlight that, footnote that, in case there is a court decision that further clarifies what cities can charge when we either collect land or collect a fee in lieu of land from developers. That may or may not be decided by the court, but it is pending in court. So that will be an interesting case for your fee schedule going forward.
So,
Thank you.
can I
Councilmember Gunderson, please.
have any of these lawsuits made housing any less expensive in their ultimate goal from Housing First?
Obviously not.
Attorney Vos.
Yeah, Mayor and Council, it feels like a hard one for me to answer, but I'm not aware of any studies that would support that premise, but that is part of the premise, of course, is that city fees, and in particular park dedication fees, building permit fees, are increasing the cost of housing. I'm not sure that there are any studies that would say if that was reduced, the cost of housing would go down, but that is the premise. So I can't answer the question, though.
Okay, thank you.
All right. All right. This is a public hearing for the 2023 fee schedule, so now I will open that public hearing. And is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak to this item? Anyone, please come forward if you are interested. Going once, going twice, gone. All right, I'm going to close the public hearing. If there's no more discussion from council, I will now entertain the first of the motions.
Motion to adopt ordinance 457 MC, adopting a revised fee schedule.
We have a motion. Can I get a second? Second. We'll give that second to Councilmember Hebert. Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. I will entertain a second motion.
Approve the resolution authorizing ordinance publication by title and summary.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, that concludes all of our public hearings. So thank you for your patience this evening as we move on to our next item. 6.5, an update on the potential roundabout that was being studied on Highway 5, just north of the fire station. And presenting again this evening is Ms. Guerin, who has patiently waited for this agenda item. Ms. Guerin, welcome back.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. I have 35 slides. I'm going to go through all of them slowly. No? Okay. This spent some time. I think it says in my staff report, I forgot to look, but I think it was April the last time we discussed the potential roundabout at the intersection of Commercial Drive and Highway 5. And so we wanted to get that back in front of you here with an update. So that's what I'm going to do tonight, and I promise I don't have 25 slides. The first slide that you're seeing here, just to remind everybody, I thought it would be worthwhile to pull this. This is out of the adopted Arboretum Area Transportation Plan that the council passed a resolution of support for that plan resolution number 2021-14, so early in 2021. And that sets the long-term vision for a whole bunch of roads, but the road we're talking about here tonight relates to Highway 5 at the intersection of Commercial Avenue and 80th Street. And this is, as noted, a long-term vision for the corridor. So, eventually the plan is for 5 to be 4 lanes all the way through Victoria. So that long-term vision had 80th Street as the planned full access intersection in this area, and there really was a pretty significant driver around that being the primary access, and that was the fire station. So at the time that the study was prepared, this was a fire station, was to always be a fire station. We weren't even in serious conversations yet about the prospect of relocating. Additionally, at the time, this parcel behind the fire station was guided and is guided for low-density residential. So because of that, this intersection of 80th Street was viewed as the primary long-term vision for the intersection. So in that vision, you see this cul-de-sac. So Commercial Avenue in the long-term vision becomes a cul-de-sac and ties back into the city's downtown master plan, which does show a goal to have Tower eventually extend through to 5 in some configuration. So it's a little bit of history there. What we're talking about now, based on the work that's been done to date, is really shifting the primary intersection in this location to be at Commercial. So this is the parcel that is adjacent to the fire station that now there's been conversation about changing that to some other use besides low-density residential. So council hasn't taken action on that, but from a transportation planning perspective, the vision of the area is starting to shift with the notion of potentially changing that land use. But the other really more significant shift is the relocation of the fire station. So, the access needs for a fire station are a lot different than access needs for the corridor. So I did not pull in all the old slides because I knew the agenda was full. You're not taking any action tonight. We can, talk about it in more detail and refresh your memory. But if you go back and look at the April meeting, the engineers who were working on doing a study really pretty much concluded that with the safety concerns at this intersection, it does start to make sense to look at improvements here. So after we had that council meeting in April, we tasked Bolton and Mink with coming up with a concept that would work both for a 2-lane plan and a 4-lane plan. And then we needed to get some input from MnDOT and the other technical folks working on the project to see would a roundabout work here. If you recall, we didn't even know whether MnDOT would be agreeable to such a thing. So this concept was prepared, which shows that a roundabout could be located at this intersection while we still have a 2-lane highway on Highway 5. And one of the big questions we had was, were they going to make us close access at 80th Street as part of an initial roundabout? We concluded that no, we wouldn't have to close access at 80th Street. We might want to look at a 3/4 intersection just for safety purposes, but that wouldn't be something that MnDOT would be mandating at the time a roundabout would be constructed. So,
Kara?
Yes.
Excuse me. Would you explain a 3/4 intersection, please?
So this is 80th Street by the fire station. So in this 3/4 intersection, you can take a right turn out of it. You can't go left.
Okay.
So if you wanted to go left, you would come out here and you would go, this tiny little short distance around the roundabout and go back the other direction. So it's a pretty nominal impact for people having to travel a little farther, and it's just much safer than having to make this left turn across traffic. Here there's kind of a lot going on. You'd have right turners coming in. The other thing that was nice about this 3/4 option is it does allow us to get a short left turn lane into the Cabin Fever property. And if you recall, the property owner had some pretty big questions and concerns about how anything at this intersection might affect that property owner. So, project were to move forward, we'd be spending more time working through the merits of both of these options to see what makes the most sense. But the good news is in either option, this access of this existing business owner was not impacted, which was one of the concerns the council had expressed. So we have met with that property owner, and he's seen this, and we've talked about that. We did attempt to meet with the property owner. Our community and economic development director made several attempts at contacting the property owner to no avail. So, we're not building a project today. So, there's only so much stalking you're going to do of somebody. The property owner's running a business and probably has other things on their mind. But so this is the concept we landed on. Now, if you recall, the county engineer had expressed concern about coming up with a concept that would still work when the 4-lane came to fruition. So we're not talking about building the 4-lane through Victoria right now. That's in the long-term bucket of projects, from through the downtown section. But we wouldn't want to go ahead and construct this roundabout today and then have to rip it all out when a 4-lane came through. So they also looked at a concept that this could be expanded to 4 lanes at such point when the 4-lane comes through. Under that scenario, and this was the same information that was presented in April, at that point, they're still showing a possible 3/4 access at this location, but you might end up in a right-in, right-out situation. This 3 still allows the left turns in because you don't have that ability to go down to a roundabout and make a quick U-turn. So that's why you're seeing that there. Access within downtown starts to become affected in the 4-lane option. But what we talked about with the council previously is this 4-lane option is happening, sensitive computer, into the future when there's likely redevelopment scenarios happening throughout downtown. So I put it in here because they did the work, but we're not anywhere near having a 4-lane funded through here. The other thing that we wanted to get out of the Bolton and Mink study was a reasonable cost estimate for the work that would be incorporated into building what is shown on this concept. So Bolton and Mink prepared a detailed cost estimate and did engage a geotechnical engineer to provide some input into their cost analysis. If you recall, the section of Highway 5 to the, I'm going to call it northeast of Commercial, is that area where we had to put the geofoam in and float the road over the top of it because it kept settling. We wanted to make sure that there was some accounting for that in the cost estimate. So what we're sitting at is a $3.3 million initial construction cost estimate in 2022 dollars. So in terms of what the team is thinking for next steps, I can tell you that overall, the technical advisory committee for the Arboretum Area Transportation Study, that includes engineers from the county, myself, MnDOT, Chanhassen. Chaska's on the committee but doesn't have as much of an impact on 5, so they don't usually weigh in on topics related at 5. But we're all in agreement that we think this is a much better vision for the corridor through here. If we could get an opportunity to have roundabouts on either end of downtown, so we know we're talking about one at 5 and 11 by Dairy Queen and one in this area, it really could go a long way to start to signal a change in condition and help slow traffic down as they're coming through into downtown. And with the land for the fire station purchased, and we know that the fire station is moving, this isn't a plan the city would have been able to put forward if the fire station was still at its previous location, because the fire chief wouldn't be okay with a right in, right out, or a 3/4. Fire truck's got to be able to go left. So we do think this is the better vision for the corridor. What we see as next steps is really starting to work with our partners to incorporate this into the Arboretum area transportation process moving forward. There's going to be some other work coming forward within this area that we think it best if we start to work our next steps for this process into other work happening in the area instead of kind of keeping it as its own standalone thing with the rest of the corridor work happening. And so what we envision is that, unless there's big concerns by the council with making this change from what was in that original plan to showing a roundabout in this corridor, we would just start to continue to work it through the process. At some point, we're going to need funding for this. As the council's aware, there's a whole lot of other things already in the queue related to funding. So, this isn't likely to be funded in the immediate short-term window. We'd be looking for funding in that midterm window. And that, of course, has been shared with the people who are looking at potentially developing the property adjacent to it.
So just to clarify, that midterm window is 2027, 28?
Yeah, not the first 5 years, but more the second 5 years is how we've been speaking of it.
Okay. So we like the idea of moving this roundabout regardless of change of plan, regardless of whether we change that to be guided commercial or guided. Are we assuming this is a great change because we want to guide this commercial eventually?
Technical staff, so we think that a roundabout at commercial makes more sense for the long-term vision of the corridor, really somewhat regardless of what happens to the property adjacent to the fire station. Because we had this idea of a land use change in conjunction with the fire station moving, it created an opportunity to have a dialogue around it that it would have been a non-starter. If I walked to city staff and said, we're going to have a 3/4 intersection by the fire station, the fire chief would have said no.
Yes. Understood. Do you have any sense about, okay, so we know that this is a better plan and we want to update that Arboretum area transportation plan. Do we have any sense about the cost of updating that plan and kind of starting to think about our world looking more like this?
So one of the things that's not ready for the council, but that'll be coming your way, is the Carver County has obtained proposals and is executing a contract for preliminary engineering for everything shown in purple on this screen. As of right now, it's not looking like we're going to have to cost share in that initial engineering work, but at some point they might be asking for some funding for our share of that, at which point it would require council approval. But what we've internally talked about with county staff, and this isn't approved yet, but should we be expanding that preliminary design scope to come out through this intersection so that we aren't having a separate designer designing something adjacent to another designer. The other piece of that puzzle, unofficially, I think the Met Council meeting is this week, but if the city council is successful in obtaining funding for the pedestrian overpass that we submitted an application for, that's at 78th and Stieger Lake Lane. We'd like to look at getting that pulled into that preliminary design work too, because you can't be designing a bridge over a highway and have them, they got to line up. So I do think that it's looking likely that everybody's going to be agreeable to just expanding the scope out to include this intersection in the preliminary engineering work, and that would end up being how we get it kind of formalized in through the process.
Okay,
I love that idea.
I have a question.
Councilmember Black.
So are you saying that MnDOT is considering changing that and not saying, and including that roundabout as part of the Arboretum transportation? Or are we still on the hook for the whole thing?
So Councilmember Black, the MnDOT's role is really regulatory, so they aren't funding really any of these vast many improvements that you see on the map. But there is a letter in your packet that notes that they are agreeable to having a roundabout at this location, which was a really huge question mark last time we talked about it. We didn't even know, if MnDOT said no, we would never be building a roundabout there. But yeah, we'll have to continue to work with the county and our other project partners to come up with a way to fund the 3.3 million, unless the city council decides that the city wants to fund the 3.3 million itself, which I, don't anticipate being where we're at today with the other 20 million in transportation improvements that we are also needing to fund locally.
So the old location for the roundabout, that was at the Park? Was that where it was supposed to be?
So the intersection of Park and Cochia is planned to be signalized. And then 78th and Stieger Lake Lane is actually planned to become a right-in, right-out only when we're implementing the 4-lane. And the reason for that is that we really need to do that in order to be able to justify the signal at Park Cochia. We couldn't have signals at both, and roundabouts didn't fit. So during the $1 million 2-year study, we did evaluate all of those options and concluded that signal at Park Cochia, right in, right out at Stieger Lake Lane was the way to go. Certainly as the project moves into the next level of detail of engineering, we're going to end up revisiting a lot of that again, which is fun.
For you.
Yeah. All right.
Okay, so a roundabout at Stieger Lake
No.
wouldn't work.
No,
That's where you're going to put the overpass?
That is correct. Yep.
Okay. I wasn't sure where that was going to go. All right. Okay, I understand. Well, when I saw the letter, it said, well, we're not opposed to it, but there's no funding for it. So that was kind of like, so where's the money going to come from? I don't have a money tree, so.
Yeah, that's MnDOT's answer really for all. There isn't any money in the MnDOT system for expansion. So for capacity increases in these developing counties, the traditional funding plan doesn't provide for that. So there's some funding available for safety improvements. There's some funding available for maintenance projects, but generally what we need out here on Highway 5 is expansion as the population has increased significantly over the last 50 years, and we still have the same 2-lane road that we had before I was born. And I'm getting old.
Call your legislators. We need capacity money.
Well, they didn't show.
All right. Council, other questions?
Yeah, just time frame
Councilmember
on
Gunderson.
82nd Street and Highway 18, County 18. Would that move up then? If we're going to if some of these get expanded, that still seems to be the priority, to be a pressure release for any kind of work that gets done on Highway 5. Because no matter what's done on Highway 5, whether we get the improvements or not, we still don't have a way to get out of Victoria if they shut Highway 5 down to do any work on either end of it, one going west or east, right? So what happens with 18 or 82nd Street? Do we?
Councilmember Gunderson, we're still looking for some portion of 23 million to fund the improvements to County Road 18. The county is working endlessly to try to secure funding for all 117 million on the purple blue and another 23 million here. They are finalizing what they're going to be looking for a bonding request for this round, which is a bonding year. And you're all aware of the the surplus that exists. So certainly I expect that council members will be hearing more about that. The county is meeting with their legislative delegation tomorrow morning, I think. The county also applied for, I want to say, 40 million in corridors of commerce funds for this same area. They are looking everywhere that they can to find whatever money we can get our hands on, and certainly will continue to ask for our support in their efforts to do so.
Yeah. I can't say enough good about the good work that this county is doing trying to secure funding for these projects. They are looking under every rock. There's lots of money down in St. Paul, so we are in conversation with our legislators about getting our name on that list. So,
in terms of timing, I'll just note that, and I think I said this at a previous meeting, we're continuing to work with the county to plug and move these projects around the CIP. Once the Met Council acts this week and the regional solicitation funds and HSIP funds are finalized, we'll be meeting again to figure out what years to plug them in. I do know the county would still prefer to see County Road 18 completed before the funded part of Highway 5, which is looking like 2026, to do the work between Minnewaska, Park Cochia, and then up Rolling Acres Road to Interlochen. Yeah, we've got a lot of construction projects coming our way.
and as we go through these processes, that brings into focus what that plan looks like a little better. So,
Correct.
yeah, that's good. All right, any other questions, council, on this? All right, Ms. Guerin, I know this was informational only. Do you have what you need from council to carry on, or do you have any questions for us?
Yeah, generally I was just looking to make sure the council members didn't have any concern with staff and the technical group and me continuing to represent to the technical group that we think that this concept for this section is the better route than what was in the adopted plan. So, you know, nodding of heads.
Yeah. Consensus, council? Yeah. Nodding of heads.
Perfect, thank you.
All right, terrific. Thank you so much. That was a good update. If it only came with money.
Had to listen to all of that other stuff first.
All right. Our final agenda item tonight is item 6.6, which is the city manager annual performance evaluation. And so pursuant to Minnesota statute 13D.05, subdivision 3A, I would like to make a motion to close the meeting to evaluate the performance of the city manager, Dana Hardy. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We will now go into closed session. Once we're done, we'll return and reconvene the regular meeting of the council. All right. I will now make a motion to reconvene the regular meeting of the council. Can I get a second, please?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. For the public's benefit, we reviewed the city manager's performance, and we have directed staff to update her contract to bring that back for approval at our next meeting in January. Council, there are no more items on our regular agenda, so let's move on to reports and emerging issues. Ms. Hardy, any reports from staff?
None from staff. Oh, actually, Ms. Edisfold.
Edisfold, you have something.
I do have something, Mayor and members of the council. I don't know if you noticed, but we do have new art that's our ongoing collaboration with Zeller Studios. This collection is known as Earth, Wind, and Fire and will be displayed till the end of January. The collection is from 5 different artists. Coco Conley, Kathleen Litwin, Kim Gordon, Susan Spoden, and Deb Zeller herself. We welcome the public to come and view the beautiful art collection during our normal business hours, Monday through Friday. And these paintings are available for purchase, and we can provide the contact information of the artist.
Terrific. Thank you, Ms. Edisfold. That's beautiful art. Again, I encourage the public to come and view this gorgeous art that is hanging on our walls. We love it. All right, council member, any reports from council, comments?
Just say thank you to Judy and Elvin for being great to work with.
Thanks.
Judy?
This is just for the Toys for Tots stuff. I checked with Len today. The Marines just left his house this afternoon with 11 more boxes of toys, and he went to the Lions Club and got an artificial Christmas tree that they donated. So there was a family that got a tree as well. He has 6 more boxes to pick up on the 14th. He's guessing with those, he will have a total of about 3,400 to 3,500 toys. Wow. In total, Christmas tree, and he also was able to collect $2,400. So I told him what an awesome achievement. I'll let everyone know tonight. And he said, we have a very generous community. Yeah, and I agree completely. And this will be my last report. But don't think that I will be gone. I'll just be on the other side. I'll see you soon.
Just be nice.
I will be. Haven't I always been nice? Yeah. Yes.
Councilmember Gunderson, anything from you?
Yeah, just second what Chad said. Thanks to Judy and thanks to Alvin for serving. It's been a pleasure to serve with you both and look forward to seeing you on the other side.
Terrific. Yeah. Alvin.
I guess this being my last meeting, it was an honor to serve and work with you. Honor to be a part of the city of Victoria. Greg and Andy, I wish you the best of luck. You're great guys. You'll do well. But I'll be watching from close.
Yep. Beautiful. Thank you. Again, I echo those sentiments. It has been so fun. I always said the best part of this job is how much you learn and the people you meet. And the people at this dais are a big part of that. So thank you so much for all of that. So with that, we have no more items to come before the council this evening. Since we went through all of these items and we just took good care of everything today, we will be canceling the December 27th council meeting. So on behalf of everyone here at the city and this council, we wish you all a Merry Christmas and the happiest of holidays this season. And with that, council, I will take a motion to adjourn.
You two have to do the final motion.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned.